The first, published in I've already said that. This week in Happy New Year. It is there is more days to come, and we've just had some as well. These are the new ones. Put a sock in it. Put a sock in it. This week's contribution comes from Angie from Facebook, as it did last time. Obviously, Facebook is a place. It's a place, that's where she lives. She made this suggestion via the Facebook page, the Puzzle Writer Facebook page, which you should absolutely go over and have a look at, and maybe also make a contribution. Although, arguably, this week's contribution might not be a contribution, and actually just a suggestion for all of these videos in general. Just press some buttons and maybe push onto a touch screen and then press some keys or something, and then congratulations, you've done a follow and a like. So, put a sock in it. What is the etymology of this particular phrase? Then I did the research. Actually, it's pretty simple, this one, so we're going to start the year off simply. This one is largely considered to be a British English phrase, but if you're not from that geographical area and you do actually say it, then well done. You are you are verbally adventurous. Actually, as it turns out, it's probably not British English, although it might be used more in British English, but it's also it might be more accurate to say imperially British English. Shall we start with the meaning? I mean, put a sock in it. The it is obviously someone's mouth. So, to tell someone to shut up. So you might say it quite abusively, or just through frustration. You might say, put a sock in it. Frankly, I don't think I've ever used this phrase, although the most likely time that I would use it, if I did use it, is probably listening to the radio in the morning. Although I have to say, this particular phrase often phrases or idioms or words actually are more of an image in our mind. That's kind of how language works. When I hear this phrase, I often think of someone being abducted, so it's actually not a very pleasant particular image. But that's the amazing thing about words and phrases, isn't it, is that most of us probably have the same sort of picture in our minds for what a word or phrase is, and that's sort of how language works, isn't it? Anyway, I'm sort of going around in circles. What I mean to say is that actually also it can form the difference between how we all understand things, and I would put it to you that that's how generational differences work. But what's the origin, apart from all of that other stuff I just said? What is the origin of this particular phrase? Well, when you look it up, the most common way for people to explain how this phrase came to being is that actually it comes from the gramophone age. I don't know whether you remember that. I don't. I don't think anyone who's alive who remembers that. But what it was is that gramophones didn't have a volume control. They just had one volume. So one way to adjust the volume on a gramophone, which might have been preset too loud, was to get a sock and literally put it in the big horn bit that all of the sound comes out of, and that would vary. So you might say put a sock in it, but you wouldn't mean it sort of abusively or aggressively or demandingly. You would just be saying, making a gentle request for the volume to be turned down. But then Worldwide Words, that wonderful website, comes marching into this particular occasion with facts and research, and definitely says that that's probably not true. That particular theory was probably put forward by people like me, not wanting to look stupid and just coming up with reasons for things instead of actually doing the research. The origin of this particular phrase is cited by Worldwide Words. It's probably not the origin, but the first two times that it was put into print is cited by Worldwide Words at opposite ends of the English-speaking world, both in 1919, within 3 months of one another. The article was put together to bring together a load of wartime slang into sort of one nice sprawling sentence. I'll read it to you. Shall we do that? There was only a time for a Dixie of gunfire and a hurried dig in the grave. No chance of Posy and Rooty at the Cain and Abel today. It had begun to rain, and some chaps called out, "Send it down, David," but others shouted, "Put a sock in it." And after a lot of grousing, we started off. What a wonderfully poetic piece of writing to describe something which was likely horrific. In August of that same year, on the other side of the English-speaking world, or the other side of this island Earth actually, in Britain, in London, a publication called the Athenaeum published a description of this particular phrase. The expression "put a sock in it," meaning leave off talking, singing or shouting. I put it to you that that's quite a good example of the difference between the British and our Antipodean cousins. Worldwide Words notes that both of these examples are a little late into the gramophone era, so it's unlikely to be to do with that, and that it's more likely that they both arose through wartime slang, through the banter. This has happened on a number of occasions in these videos, actually, that we discover that something that's become an idiom or something which seems to be sort of quite witty has actually come out of the banter and the brother and sisterhood of the armed forces. Of course, both the British and the Australians fought under the same thin piece of waving material during that period in World War One. So they would have interacted and then gone home to their respective countries and spread it, you know, to the four corners. I mean, literally in this sense, to the two halves of the globe. I just want to say at this point that I'm not totally convinced that the forge of war is the beginning of all lexical and technological innovation. Although it does seem to be some kind of grand truth of the march of innovation, I'm suspicious of it as something that we assume to be something that is right. I don't really have an alternative answer, but, you know, it's something to think about. Anyway, off the back of that rather heavy-handed note, here is another video right here, and here is also another video, and you can do a subscribe if you press a button on my face. If you want to make a suggestion for another video, head over to the Facebook group. Anyway, thanks then, bye!